Hello, everybody. Giving 5 minutes for everyone to just jump on in. I have a feeling with your recent growth, KP, that people are on standby with your channel. Considering you got a follow when you weren't even online. It's just like, we're waiting for KP.
Hey, Monster the Mink. Yeah, it's been kind of crazy.
Well,
A
hello.
lot of like really awesome new people though, like like not just like followers, like
followers of
yeah, like a lot
like
of
new faces, people that haven't
yeah,
been
like
there before. See, now
Mini
that's
Mama,
good
Red the
growth.
Dread, Finn. Hi guys. Oh, Adventuring Daniel wants us to show a ferret foot, so we will do that.
Oh, well,
You know,
okay,
it's their
let's.
birthday. It's the boy's birthday today, guys. Everybody say happy birthday.
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday, Fishy!
Look at the feet! Oh my god! So many beans! So many beans!
Oh, that reminds me of that toe beans one that Jess posted
I
on
know,
TikTok.
it's so good.
Okay, now that we've started with beans.
And it's gone so viral.
I know. It's
the
crazy.
little beans one.
Yeah.
Listen, anytime you put
The
the
Catmo one.
otters clapping, by the way, you're gonna go viral, even if you don't do anything. You do that clip.
Well,
oh my god.
Otter toe beans are so cute.
They are the best. And when they use their little hands to do things, I'm like, no.
Yeah,
stop.
Daniel.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody to another Creature Picture with the PawdSquad. Today we have Rhea, as you can see on screen, with a mug. Is that part of your merch, or is that a?
Hey, first of all, my name is KP, not Reha.
KP.
JJ.
Sorry.
He's obsessed with Reha because she's not here today,
Yeah.
and we are struggling. But we've got Georgie, who is gonna do a great job.
I was about to choose
as a substitute. But yeah, it's always
We
pure
hope.
panic when it's like Reha's not coming. Who's gonna keep us all in
just
line?
like I did now. I'm like, Rhea's not here, but Georgie is with us, and I don't actually need to even introduce you, KP. You've become your own brand with the MSRs. But I was just asking. There he is. Look at that face. So, for those joining us, we will be talking about roles in facility and all the different roles you can find in aquariums and zoos, because we've covered basically with KP the qualifications you need to possibly join a facility, but what are the different roles and systems here? So we have a couple of questions that Georgie today is going to be helping us with as well. And again, please post all your questions in the comments, and whether you post it on the Discord, on KP's Twitch, or on my YouTube, and we will get to them. But yes, let's move on to the first question. Georgie, do you want to take it away?
Right, okay, so the first question is, what are the different types of staff roles at zoos and aquariums?
A lot of different roles, and some of this is going to kind of depend on like what exact facility that you are at. So usually when we're working with marine mammals, we're called trainers. Whereas in a lot of zoos, even though they perform almost the exact same roles, you're gonna hear them called zookeepers, or like animal husbandry assistants and stuff like that. So those are pretty much the same role though. So you've obviously got your marine mammal trainers, which is or animal trainers or whatever, which are the ones that are really responsible for the health and well-being of the animals. You usually have an animal health care department, which at any large facility is going to be pretty much completely standalone. Like we have our own full-time vet and also a secondary vet, usually in the form of like an extern, and then an army of vet techs that do a really amazing job, and all of that stuff usually takes place on site. So there's that animal healthcare department, and they're not just looking after like the the mammals. The mammals are kind of like everybody's big ticket items, but obviously they take care of the fish and everybody like that as well. So that's your sort of healthcare department. And then you'll usually have, depending on the facility that you're at, like we have aquarists as well, and those guys are just like a slightly different role, because even though I could probably learn to take care of a lot of like land animals, it would be much trickier for me to go and try to be an aquarist. Like they know a lot more about water quality and all of that stuff. So it's kind of taking care of water breathing animals is a little bit different than just your standard like marine mammals or even just land animals. Oh my gosh, let's see. Then you've obviously usually got like all of your classic, like what we call like frontline staff, which are going to be like the people selling tickets and the people
Oh, yes.
greeting people, like guest services. Even like your cafe staff, which are usually like a full army in and amongst themselves. And then a lot of times you also have like interpreters, so like people who are really kind of there to put on like different types of programs throughout the day and talk to people and be in the front line that way. Let's see, let's go through some more. We got your gift shop people. So like it's a huge, like it's its own kind of ecosystem almost. And then of course you've got like your grounds crew who's taking care of like the plants and making sure that everything is clean and looks great for people. You've obviously got your maintenance crew too, which is going to be like for us that does a lot of our water quality and our filtration stuff like that. So, and then of course you've got like anywhere you're going to have like what I call carpet land people, which are those people that live in carpet land who like sit at a desk and have normal desk jobs.
Oh, so you have slang for that. That's so cool.
Yeah. And so they, that's your PR team, your marketing, your HR department, all of that stuff. So really like just about anybody with any set of skills could probably work at a zoo or an aquarium, like believe it or not, because everybody needs all of those types of, every sort of company needs all of those different types of skills. So
absolutely, and I think
that's what I can think of for right now, and we'll obviously go in depth a little bit more. But
feel free to interrupt and say, "Oh, by the way, this position as well."
Yeah, no, I mean seriously, because I know that I've forgotten many, but that's kind of just a brief rundown.
Yes, and a perfect example is of Monterey Bay, where you're actually streaming currently at the moment, where they have their own PR and marketing team that do all those games and stuff like that. And I believe some of them are actually trained like they are animal carers and so on, but some of them are just in marketing. But it's like such an immense amount of people to make sure that the aquarium runs and also is popular and also gets the people to come in.
Yeah, I mean, I think a good PR team is really, really important. I mean, I think you can kind of see that in the difference of different facilities. Like places that have good PR teams are just a step above everybody else.
Absolutely. They sort of set that bar of what is known and what isn't known. And a perfect example is Joey and Monterey Bay. I think they're one of the top places that I've seen that actually feature their otters so much and their seals and so on. And you guys as well, the trainers yourselves. I know you're not a PR team, but your social media accounts,
we should be. We should be.
In all retrospect, you could be the marketing team of Anaqua. You guys do that so well. I mean, what you're doing with this platform at the moment, I think you've gone beyond your position and you're slowly reaching that part where you're an influencer and you could quite well be a community manager. It's quite a powerful thing.
Yeah, I've thought about it. I mean, like, if they came to ask me, I'd have some things to think about because I really enjoy doing it. And like, I mean, part of that too is we've been closed and I miss people. Like, I miss sharing the animals with people is such an important part of the job. And I really miss like having that feeling like I'm having an impact, because like even though I know I have an impact on the animals every single day, and I know that I take good care of them, and I'm not worried about that anymore. But I want to feel like I'm making a difference in the world, and I feel like that's kind of what we're doing. That's what we're accomplishing here today. That's what you guys being here is accomplishing.
This is all why we do this, is to gain exposure. Because I think with all these facilities, it's part 50% education and obviously 50% rehabilitation and care for the animals, but the education is a big part of it. I mean, I had no idea about sea otters before I even saw an otter last year.
Yeah.
So it's been a big,
no,
big
I mean,
thing.
it's hugely important, and so yeah, I'm excited about where things are going for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's been the silver lining. Unfortunately, such a horrible thing, but the silver lining that has happened with COVID is that it's brought so many people to these avenues to discover these things, and it's enriched their lives as well and changed their lives. Like the question you posted on your channel recently of how has this changed people's lives? It's been a massive impact, and so yeah, it's this crossing of roles, but
Yeah.
that's us going a bit beyond.
Yeah. Anyway.
Anyway, I will actually take with a question to lead up from that before we continue with Georgie's question is, which one of the roles would you say is, and I know there's no measure, I'm not stealing away from anyone's role, but which one of the roles is like the busiest role, if I can, let me put that more diplomatic, the busiest role in an aquarium?
The busiest role.
The most shifts, always front of office, always carrying,
You know,
yeah.
one thing I always wish is I wish that and I think that all zoos and aquariums should kind of incorporate this. I wish that I got to like shadow more roles because I feel like there's something about being in somebody else's shoes that really helps you to gain perspective. Because one thing that I find is that, you know, if we go and we move the otters and we call for a pool drop on one of the pools and it takes them 20 minutes to start dropping the pool, we're like, oh my gosh, like what are they even doing? You know, like that's your first instinct to say is like, you know, I worked so hard to do this. What are they even doing? But if you really go into their role, like the engineers are so busy. Yes. They have so much to do. And so so I think that it's really important to put yourself in other people's shoes. So I'm not I guess mostly it's going to depend on how well you're staffed in those areas. Yes. I do think that the marine mammal department is well, and this is because we are understaffed, is one of the busiest roles to have right now. And we don't, unfortunately, we don't get to spend as much time with the animals doing all the fun stuff like training and stuff like that when, you know, when we don't have that kind of staff. And I think we can see that when we look at Monterey Bays, whenever they come out to do a training session. Their animals are extremely well behaved, like very, very well trained in a variety of different ways. And it's not because they just have better otters. It's because we aren't able to spend the time with the animals that we would really like to. I do think our engineering department is extremely busy. They are also very understaffed. There's like 4 of them that have to take care of every single system.
4
in the entire aquarium. Well, on any given day, yes. I think a total they probably have like 7 or something like that. But on any given day, there's about 4. So, so yeah, I think those people are very important. I don't envy the like guest services department because I think that they have so much going on where they, you know, are oftentimes unfortunately having to deal with the unhappy guests. So that's you know, that's not a role that anybody wants to have. But yeah, so I mean, like you said, like it's not like it's a hard question. I think that I think that some of the operations staff are definitely very busy, but I think that a lot of that could be solved by just like staffing areas appropriately. But some of that you get from, you know, like one thing I wish a lot is that like the upper management would come and work a day in our role and just see what's up. And that's why I'm very excited because we actually the new guy just came and found us yesterday and was like, I'm gonna shadow you guys next week, so I'll see you guys on whatever day. Well, nice. And so that's really exciting for me. So I mean, you know, because you can't, I don't believe you can really understand what you know what's needed in an area from carpet land, you know.
Absolutely. You just assume why is this taking so long, and you don't know, like an otter was running this way, we had to get it. It's like all those misinterpretations. So nice to see carpet land on the floor. But yeah, that's also nice to hear. But yeah, we almost forgot about the engineers. Every time the pool goes down, we need to think about the engineers and all that. Ooh, ding!
Thanks for the follow.
Follow.
New friends.
But yeah, Georgie, want to take away with the second question?
Sure. So the second question we've got is how much do the different staff roles differ between a zoo versus an aquarium?
Okay.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so that's a good question. And I've only worked briefly in zoos. So I don't know all of the different roles, but what I do know is when I was at Point Defiance, and that was working with a lot of the similar animals, sea otters, walruses, seals, those kinds of creatures. We did all of our own water quality measurements, and even pool drops. Like we literally had the access to the equipment, and we dropped our own pools. So I think in zoos and aquariums, you really we're really kind of spoiled, because traditionally we are trainers. It almost gets held a little bit above, and there's been unfortunately some, there's feeling in the zoo and aquarium world where trainers think they're better than the other. Hopefully a little bit of that's going away, but that is kind of like the thing where it's been like, oh, these are trainers, they're not zookeepers, we're trainers. I guess you get a little bit of that wherever you go, but but typically in zoos, they have way more on their plate, zookeepers do, than trainers do. Trainers are expected to do a lot of behavioral training with the animals, usually for like shows and stuff, I guess, is kind of like the big difference. In zoos you tend to have less like structured shows per se. A lot of times they're more like keeper talks is kind of the way that they're framed. So I think that's part of the difference, is having like actual shows with animals involved. Involves a lot of training, and so trainers have kind of gotten away with not having to do some of the other tasks that a lot of zookeepers are doing. So that is like kind of a big difference, is the workload. And in general, zookeepers have way more animals to take care of, and I think are much busier than trainers are as a whole. We're a little bit spoiled. So then your engineering department would be taking care of more of like the really technical stuff, like making sure that pumps and all of that stuff is like really working well and appropriately, and stuff like that. So that's one major role, and probably the only one that I can really sort of speak to, because I haven't really, like I said, like I haven't really worked extensively in zoos, but when I was working as a zookeeper at the Denver Zoo, we had probably like hundreds of animals that we were looking out for. And granted, we had a lot of birds and stuff like that, where they're much smaller animals, but like it was just way more of a like physical workload than even 8 otters is.
So it's like suddenly just lost my train of thought there as I was speaking about it. I saw the otter swimming next to my head. I'm like, oh my god, it's floating. Someone asked us like, I'll need to. Sorry, question interrupt me. I'll find out later if Monterey Bay only has girl otters. I think they had one boy otter.
Oh, I'm not really sure. I thought it was only females, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then somebody's saying here, like, I prefer informative talks to shows, and I tend to agree with you. But I do think that you can have sort of a happy marriage between both. Like, yes. I don't think we need music. I don't think there needs to be fireworks. I think that the animals are interesting, and I think that we can ask them to do behaviors that showcase natural things. Absolutely. And explain that in a way that is both extremely educational but also entertaining. I think there is a way to do that. Yes. And once we start setting the bar so that people aren't expecting animals to jump through flaming hoops, and that they're expecting more of a natural type of a program, then then it becomes like that becomes the standard, and people will be very excited to see that kind of stuff. So I think you ride a fine line because you do want to engage people. You do want to draw them in, get their attention, but you don't want to like, this isn't a circus,
Yes.
So yeah, it's I agree, but I think we can have a little bit of both. Like I think we can have fun and interesting programs that are extremely informative.
But you just mentioned there with the behaviors. I mean, as much as you touching the paw of an otter or clapping the hand, comes that education. Oh, we do this because we need to look after.
Well, yeah,
them,
I mean the clapping is super cute, but what it is it's essentially the rock banging behavior, and we can explain that.
Absolutely. So, as you said, the marriage and information, definitely not through hoops. That is a bygone era. But I think there should. Isn't that still stimulating for the animal? If even if for the educational purposes, you're asking him to do or them a little behavioral maneuver.
Yeah. So the thing is the reason that I don't now again poor Georgie's like getting a taste of what it's like welcome to JJ and KP talk about something entirely different than the actual show. So like even when you're talking about animals jumping through hoops or balancing balls on their noses, we think of those as being like silly behaviors, but the animals don't care is the bottom line. Like I don't think they're bad behaviors because the animals are being exploited or whatever, because the animals are still being engaged. Like they still have that mental engagement and everything going on, and they don't care that they're jumping through a hoop or balancing a ball on their nose. Like it doesn't make any difference to them. What makes a difference to me is it makes a difference to the people that are watching. That I don't want people to think that these animals are purely here for your entertainment or that they are pets like that. So that's where it makes a difference for me. Honestly, as long as the animals are learning behaviors, it doesn't really matter to them. But it where it really counts, I feel like is with the people that are watching, and whether or not you watch a sea lion balance a ball on its nose, you're never gonna come away with any important information from that. You might just think that was really cool, but that's not an educational experience.
Yeah.
So that's where the difference is for me. But I think like it's important to note that like the animals don't really care. They just like as long as they're learning, it's good. But yeah, it's more because of the impact that it has on the people that I prefer not to do those types of things.
Absolutely. Very, very quickly, just speaking to our user, yes, that is a real kelp forest in the water. They have a kelp forest. But
yes,
held up by currents and weird jets and things. It's very technical.
I don't think it's actual. Is it actual real kelp though? I think it's just that extremely expensive fake kelp.
I heard on the Twitch stream that's real kelp, and they actually have.
Oh, really?
Like underwater. Okay, I'm paraphrasing because I was watching their stream, but they have underwater jets and actual from underneath and the side to make sure that the kelp stays in a specific way and waving. So I was like,
interesting.
Yeah, no, I'm like, oh, we need a kelp farm. Anyway, sorry.
I know.
Georgie!
Georgie, do you have any other questions?
Do I interrupt or? Well, there's actually a question about kind of staff members educating visitors, and it said, in what ways do staff members educate visitors on a regular basis? And I kind of thought that's kind of a bit following on from what you were just talking about, really. So yeah, if you want to kind of expand on that, I guess. Yeah.
So it does depend on the facility and where you're at. So zookeepers are going to have more of a usually any kind of zookeeper talks is usually the way that they're phrased at zoos and aquariums. Those are going to happen from the zookeepers. The zookeepers have their own talks. I really prefer this method of it, and in some ways we do it at the Vancouver Aquarium, and hopefully we'll do more in the future. But we have our shows, but then we also have trainer talk programs, and in my experience the trainer talks are always more like we get a lot more positive feedback because you're hearing it from the mouth of somebody who knows, who works with these animals, yes. Rather than having like a dedicated person who's like conducting a show. So And then you get the opportunity to come up and ask questions about it later. So yeah, so it's there is a difference there. And I prefer the trainer talk method, and it's it's taken some convincing to get some of the other trainers on board, because it is added to the workload. But I think that you can do it in such a way that you are working with the animal, but also just talking about what you're doing. So yeah, so those are kind of like some of the that's a role that trainers play in educating. I always try to be available for questions and things like that, because I think it's really important. And then you usually do have, regardless of whether or not they run your shows or not, there usually are like sort of educator roles throughout the aquarium, which we call them interpreters, but in a lot of zoos and aquariums, they're called educators. And they're basically just people who have, a lot of knowledge about certain things, and can go and talk to people at certain areas, and engage people in that way. So those are sort of the main people that are going to be involved in like real like guest interaction. And it's one of those things that I feel like a lot of animal trainers or zookeepers get involved in the field because they're like, I don't even really care about people. I want to work with animals. But it is important to know that is, working with people and talking to people is still an enormously important part of the role. So
Yes, absolutely. As you just mentioned, otherwise you're resorting to these kind of channels to engage with people, educate people, and bring more eyes to a very important cause.
right.
But let's move on to the next question, Georgie.
Yeah, I was going to say actually, in that vein, how are staff members selected to speak to visitors, or is it just trainers, or is there a selection process?
Oh, yes and no. I mean, in general, every single trainer is expected to be able to speak on microphone, and it is a skill. I don't know if anybody's ever tried it. Hearing your voice really, really loud for the first time is weird, and it takes some getting used to, and not listening to yourself to the point that you forget what you were trying to say is a skill that takes some work. So every like zookeeper and trainer is usually expected to have this skill, or to at least be able to develop this skill pretty early on. There are sometimes times where they'll be like, okay, we're I don't know, like we've got a news crew here, and we'd like this particular person to talk to them, and that might be because they want to talk about something specific that this particular person has an expertise in. It might just be because this person's our best public speaker. So there could sometimes be instances like that, but as a general rule, everybody is really expected to do it, and we usually try to divvy it up and make it fair throughout the day, so that one person isn't just talking all the time. Although I'm the person who literally just I'm like, I'll do all the shows, like it's fine. Like I'd rather do it, so but yeah, and everybody's also expected to be able to answer questions, because guests do come up to you with questions from time to time. So
I was just about to say, what, KP would do the shows?
yeah, imagine.
Yeah. The face of Auto World.
Yeah.
Next question then.
So the next one is, how do staff members track how much each animal has eaten during the day?
Yeah. So we do make specific diets for all of the animals, and they're usually divided up into then, different sessions. So we have the food amount. Now, as long as the animals don't have any like underlying health issues, or there's not any weight concerns or anything like that, having a little bit more or a little bit less than they were supposed to is not a big deal. These diets are not that specific as to, that to be a problem. So yeah, so you will see sometimes when we go up and we do clams from heaven or whatever, when like fish is just raining down from the sky. We do understand that the animals are not going to get their exact diets, but in general, they're going to get roughly a similar amount, and it's, you know, it's really not too big of a deal. But yeah, we do in the morning. Diet prep is done. Each animal has we have a giant board, and each animal has its own diet laid out in a specific way. And then there are some animals who have, you know, health concerns or dietary concerns, and then we obviously make sure that those guys get the appropriate kinds of food and stuff like that. But in general, it's not like for these guys, it's not as big a deal unless there's something else going on. But
yeah, one question that's popping up. Oh, sorry. Also, with trainers and things like that. Are the trainers also split up in what animals they actually take care of, or is it something that's just broad range? You guys actually look after most of the animals in the aquarium?
Yeah, usually everybody is split up. So when I first started, I was a beluga and sea otter trainer. That was it, and we only had 3 sea otters. So that was basically all we had to do. And so what we did, training all day long, training. And then kind of as the, you know, years have gone on and things have changed, and we don't have that kind of staff anymore. That's where it's morphed into, okay, well, we can't split this up. Like, there's too few of you, so you all have to do everything.
Oh gosh.
So yeah, so at this point in time, we do not. I work with the sea lions, the harbor seals, the fur seals, the the sea otters, the penguins. We work with it all. So, but yeah, at most places you would have like and then in zoos, you know, you'll have like we're the Southeast Asia team who looks after like the tigers, and like, you know, or this is the primate team. And there'll be like, you know, even maybe some sub categories within those categories. But yeah, so in general, there's usually some dividing up, because ultimately when you look at like how many animals we're taking care of right now, we have what, I think 11 or 12 sea lions. I can never remember the number. It's way too many. And, you know, 8 sea otters. And then, you know, that doesn't even include all the other animals. Then, like, what can I possibly do? You know, I can't train all of those animals, you know. So then, you know, that's why when you divide them up into smaller categories, like if I was just working with the sea otters, well, all day long, guess what I'd be doing? I'd be training sea otters to do things, and you know, that would be the only thing on my mind, and that really clears up a lot of space. So so in general, that's like kind of best practices is to have smaller groups of people working with certain animals. Yeah. Oh, at the time when I was working, when there were only 3 sea otters, no, it was before that. It was Milo, Tanu, and Elfin. It was before Katmai ever even came.
Oh, Tanu. The late great Tanu.
Yeah.
And very quick question.
That makes a lot of sense.
Does Billy still visit Joey? I think you missed that question.
Sorry, what?
Does Billy still visit Joey?
Does Billy still visit Joey? Sometimes. So Billy is very, very busy. And Billy has never really, the otters are not an animal that Billy has ever really worked with. He's a sea lion dude through and through. Yeah. So that's where his priorities lie. So he's usually there. However, I did ask him because it came up as like for our little otter party that we're planning. That was one of the main requests. Not a specific type of party, but just that Billy be there. And I asked him, and he will be there for the at least the birthday party that I'm hosting, which is going to be a little bit before. Joey's going to basically have a birthday week.
Nice, lucky Joey.
So the Saturday before his actual birthday, I'll have a little party, and Billy will be there.
I want to be an otter all of a sudden. And you know what the thing is, Joey might not even know He just knows, oh, that day I got so many treats. This day I'm also getting so many treats. Next day,
Oh yeah, he doesn't. They don't really care about their
Yeah.
birthdays. I mean, like literally almost every day is their birthday. I mean, when you
It's
look
true.
at what's happening. So,
True.
but it's for you guys. So.
Thank you so much. Oh, I almost went blurry. I got so excited. My camera's getting teary-eyed. Yeah, Georgie, next question.
Next one is, in situations where an animal is not doing well or seems to be sick, which staff members are needed to help and treat the animal?
So usually what happens when an animal starts to like behave differently, the trainers or the zookeepers are the first people to know, and it's because we are watching them all the time. We also have a good idea of what they're eating, and that's usually the first thing that'll happen is their appetites will change just a little bit. Animals, these guys are wild animals, despite having lived with us for a long period of time, and so they are not they are programmed to not show illness or injury. That's kind of their thing. So yeah, so that's usually the first people to know about that are the trainers, and then we inform the vet staff about everything that's going on. Like, oftentimes I feel like the vet staff is probably like, good God, like they have to listen to so many things, and it's really like half the time it's just like, oh, he clipped his nail a little too short and it was bleeding a little bit, and they're like, stop, he's fine, like it's enough. But we tell them about every little thing, and then it's up to the vet staff to decide whether or not that is something that they're concerned about or that they want to address in any way. So yes, so that is like kind of the progression of it, and then it kind of circles back. So then maybe the vet staff says, okay, well, we're gonna start this medication, and so then we have to make the medication and give it to the animal, and then report back to the vet staff about how that's working. And so it's just an endless communication loop, and that's just really, really important. But yeah, more often than not, we're just being a little bit hypochondriacs. We're always worried about these guys in some way, shape, or form, and every little change, we're like, what's that? He didn't eat the rest of his squid. What's going on? And more often than not, it's nothing. But
so you have that stress too. It's nice to know. Most of us it's like, oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
See, folks, it's so something that happens. But as always, we must trust our trainers. When a trainer or staff member comes online and says they're going to be fine, they mean it. There's no reason for them to lie. But I've got one question here. How is Dr. Marty able to oversee so many animals? So many animals. Are there more vets behind the scenes? I think, yeah, well, that's all the vet techs.
Yeah, so we do have a veterinary extern is what it's called. So she is a veterinarian, like she's been through like all of the vet thing, and then you have to go for specialization. So it's not like just any vet could get a job at a zoo or aquarium. Like, taking care of exotic animals is very different than taking care of dogs and cats. So the veterinary extern program is a year-long program out of vet school where they literally go and learn how to take care of like exotic animals, and they've had some experience before, but yeah, so we do have another veterinarian who is on site, but ultimately Dr. Marty is like kind of responsible for everything, and the truth is he does not see all the animals. He just gets the information, and then he makes a decision. Half the time it's just through email, and you're just like, this is what I saw, and then the vet techs are like, hey Marty, here's what's going on. Do you want to do anything about it? And then he makes a decision about that. So it's not actually very common that Marty sees the animals unless it is a real procedure or emergency or something like that.
Oh well, there we go. I mean, Dr. Marty is one of the most popular. Now you know
Yeah.
the reach he has and his ability. But yeah, we love them in the show. But yeah, next question.
Next question is: do all zoos and aquariums have their own medical / veterinarian staff, or do they sometimes need to outsource?
Yeah, so in general, any like AZA organization, any large zoo or aquarium is going to have their own vet staff. But there are sometimes like we have recently like for Lola, who's at the Marine Mammal Rescue Center, like any kind of eye issues, we actually outsource like a zoological optometrist.
Oh wow.
And she does most of our same person, and she works at a, I think she just works at a veterinary like emergency hospital. But we use her for all of our optometry needs if we have things that need to be dealt with more than just this animal needs eye drops or whatever. And then there's things like we do not have a CT machine. So if we need to do a CT scan on an animal, we will take it to a clinic or something like that around that does have a CT machine. So some of that is outsourced, but in general, a large enough zoo and aquarium is going to have all of their own vet staff.
Oh well, that's a good thing.
That makes sense.
It's basically the otters live in a hotel. They got their own doctors, they got the trainers, they got their food. What a little life. Yeah, let's move on to the next question.
So do you think technology, for example, cameras, sensors, etc., play a large part in relieving some of the workload strain on staff members?
Technology? Yeah, I mean, it all kind of helps. So, for instance, like things like we have like a lot of like alarms on our water quality that will go off if water quality leaves some sort of range that we've set for it to be in. Like animals like our sea otters, there should be 0 chlorine in the water, whereas some of the other animals, it's actually in there. I mean, it's less than your drinking water, but it's basically like the level of drinking water, but not so for the otters. So if that were to get out of the range for the otters, like there are alarms that go off and tell the world that we need to make some sort of change. So there's some things like that, like technology wise, that I think are really helpful. I'm trying to think if there's like a specific like instance of, I mean, that's what comes to mind right off the bat when we talk about technology. I mean, having the webcams around for the otters is nice for me, because I can, like, if I'm like worried about them with a particular toy, all I have to do is turn on the live cam, and then I don't have to walk all the way out there. So that makes a difference. We did have to try, like, sometimes some people have funny ideas about technology and how they could help us. Like, we were when they started like sort of downsizing our staff, there was some concern because we were like, how are we going to get to do records? Like, we can't even, like, we're running from one thing to another, and we never have time to sit down and do proper records. Because normally what you would do is you would go to a session, then come back, do the records for that session, and then prepare for your next session. And that's how that kind of works. But so they were like, the idea then was that we would all have these iPads that we would carry around with us, and we could do our records like out at the exhibits. And we were just like, this is the most out of touch, stupid idea. Like, first of all, where am I gonna put an iPad? Do you have any idea how many iPads we're gonna burn through? Like,
yes.
iPads are just gonna be smashed to smithereens all over the place.
Stolen by the little otters.
Secondly, I don't know if you recall, but this is Vancouver, and it is raining all the time. Where am I gonna put this, like, silly iPad? Like, I don't care what kind of waterproof case you have, it doesn't make a difference in Vancouver weather. So some of those things, like, are a little bit, and that's why it's really nice to get somebody to come and actually shadow in an area because you like it's otherwise it's impossible to know those types of things.
Yes.
Like even we had to try to tell them, they kept giving us like these little rain jackets, and we're like, these aren't waterproof, and they're like, yes it is, it says waterproof on the label. And I'm like, I'm telling you that after 6 hours in the absolute pouring rain, this is not waterproof. Like, we are soaked to the bone. And so they had to go and like really dig around to try to find actual waterproofed jackets. And even then it's like, okay, but after about 6 months this jacket becomes less and less waterproof, so you've got to keep replacing them. So some of that stuff is definitely like people in Carpetland don't quite understand. Like, yeah, just take iPads, of course your jacket's waterproof.
It'll work
like,
perfectly, it's mobile.
yeah. So there's definitely some instances of that, and that, like, you know, where they're like, here, technology, and I'm like, can you stop? Like, we're not doing iPads, stop it. Like
I can just see the, not just about the rain and that, but the technical nightmare. I mean, the one time that who was it again? I think it was either Kunik or Mac got hold of the scrunchie. Now imagine if you have an iPad on
oh
you.
yeah,
Oh my god.
yeah, that was so funny.
And that post when the person dropped the phone in the pool and the otter went on a little filming spree. It's so much could go wrong there.
Yeah,
true.
so the next question is, aside from an obvious answer of money, what are some of the biggest challenges for zoos and aquariums to get the proper required number of staff on board?
Yeah, I mean, obviously money is the bigger one. Although it's not really like we're making a lot of money, so you know, it shouldn't really be that big a deal. But yeah, I mean, like it can be kind of tricky to find, like there's no shortage of people who want to do this job, but it can be sort of hard to find people who work together in a team in the right way. I think that that's like probably one of the main like super important qualifications, because like the teamwork aspect of it is not always like that easy, and that tends to be kind of more of a quality that like a person either has or doesn't. Like it can be, it's a harder quality to learn how to appropriately work together as a team and have lots of communication, and especially in this field, because I think most people get into this field because they're like, I just want to hang out with animals all day, I hate people. And it's like, well, that's not gonna really work. So you know, it's one of those things. So I think that can be kind of hard. Like, even when you hire somebody, if they don't mesh with the team or whatever, then you've got a different set of problems on your hands. So I think that is probably one of the bigger challenges, is just finding people. And sometimes somebody might work perfectly well with one team, but it just doesn't work out with the other set of people. I mean, finding people who have like that chemistry to like work together awesome. Like, when you have a group of people that can do that, it is just like, it's unbelievable. Like, I don't know, like I've had people tell me too, they can tell the difference sometimes, like at work, like on our Friday Saturday crew is just like unreal. Like we are so on board, and like to the point where we can like almost read each other's minds. Like, that's like next level teamwork, you know? Like it's like nobody has to ask what to do next, because we all just know. And and we just you know, we just go and we just do it. And there's something really amazing about having a really good team. And I think that that's probably like a hiring manager's like biggest problem, is just trying to find you know, trying to put together a really good team.
But I also feel like in every organization, that's always not going to be 100% concrete. You're always going to get things here and there. But I mean, that's part of the... I was going to introduce with a question related to this. It's a bit of a two-parter, but obviously with COVID happening, there's been a lot of downsizing in all these facilities and that. How much has it actually impacted the roles within the facility? And the follow up to that is, would the aquarium consider trying to go back to the old system, or have they learned to do ways that have been more efficient, if I can put it that way?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that we've figured out ways to be more efficient. Having said that, like, um, so we are extremely efficient at this point in making sure that every animal gets their basic needs every single day. But you guys can see that sometimes that means we come out and literally spend 2 minutes with the otters before we have to race away.
Yeah.
And we were there, we saw them all. Oh, okay, everybody looks fine. Here, eat this food. Bye, see you later. And that's all the time that we have for them. So that's totally fine. It's especially because we have the social structure that we do with the animals, where they are more than capable, obviously, of entertaining themselves. And if we run up and throw toys in, twice a day, then they're perfectly happy. But what it does mean is that we are not able to train behaviors in a way that we would really, really like to. So some things just get done, sort of halfway, when it could be a much better training process. Like I think some of you saw the voluntary vaccines we did with Taz and Joey the other day, and they went fine, but it could have been spectacular. Had we had the time to really train those behaviors, then ideally the animals would just sit there and relax. Of course, Joey barely even noticed. He was like, something bit me. He was like, he Forrest Gumped about it. But Taz was like, hey, ow, what the? And so we could train them to literally just sit there, regardless of if something jumps up and bites them in the bum.
Yes.
Like it does in this instance. And so instead of like having to run in and just do a really quick vaccine, we could make it a more positive experience, but we don't have the time to do that. So what we did was the bare minimum of what was required, and the animals got their vaccine, and that's fine. It's fine. Yeah. It's just not it's just not what we could be capable of doing if we had the time. So it's just two different schools of thought at looking at things. Like if you're totally fine with, just scraping by with the bare minimum and the animals just get fed and stuff like that, then that is a way of doing things, and it is not necessarily bad. Like I said, I don't think the otters are suffering from it at all. Yeah. They're still like happy, healthy, totally having a good time. Still get their things, as long as you've got that like appropriate social, structure, and like things are dynamic enough in their habitat that they don't need us, then that's totally fine. But you are missing some things as far as like training and what could be possible. I mean, so when people ask, about doing a surrogate mother program, well, that's never going to be possible for us with the way that we operate now with that kind of staffing. I mean, when we saw, like during the charity stream, we watched them come out here, have it put a net in the water, have the animal swim into the net. They scooped her up, put her on the haul out. She was just sitting there like a perfect angel, eating the whole time. And that's part of their process for getting the animals in and out and doing things for their surrogate mother program. That like extreme level of training is a part of it. Yeah. And we don't have the ability to do that with the staff that we have. So that's just. And not to mention that the infrastructure that we have doesn't allow for it either. But that's just the reality of, if you want to do really, really cool things like that, then you need to have, you need to have the more staff, the merrier. Yeah. Like I said, too, it's not like we're really like, we're not getting paid that much. Like, you'd probably have happier people, too, because if we had more of us, then I have to do less. Then I feel like maybe that $20 an hour is a little bit more worth it if I'm only having to do, half of what I'm doing today, So it's just two different schools of thought, and like the way that you want to operate your facility. So. And
I think that's the most. Someone just said, did Joey meep when he had his vaccine? I almost feel like yes. And if he didn't,
actually, I honestly, guys, he barely even noticed. Like,
just like, like you said, Forrest Gump.
I don't remember him meeping but he was just like, hey, what's up? And like he barely even noticed. He's not a very perceptive animal.
But with that that follow-up question from that, because yes, it's very good. We know that the animals still get the care, but how much impact has it made it to yourself, like personally? Would you want to see it go back to the way it was, or do you feel there are things that would be like, you know what? I know you mentioned Sunday, but you know what? This has been very efficient. We could change it. Or do you feel that the aquarium should get back to that system as quickly as possible, where
Yeah, well, I do. But that doesn't mean that I think that we should go back to being less efficient. You know, so I
yeah,
feel like
absolutely.
what we've learned is like is really valuable is like what we are capable of doing
Yeah, that's
um
amazing.
if needed. And so but I think that that would be awesome then to go back to the other way and being able to be like, okay, now look at how much time we have. Like
Yes.
let's kick butt, like, you know, and the things that we would be capable of. But yeah, I mean, I do think that having teams that are responsible for certain animals is the best way to, I mean, it's the best way in a lot of ways too, because we now have like 8 trainers, and there are like that's a lot of people to communicate with, you know.
Good
So
heavens.
like the communication kind of suffers that way because you're 8 of us communicating across every single animal that we have. Whereas if you have a group of, say, 3 or 4 people are responsible for this group of animals, it's much easier to keep good communication with 3 or 4 people than it is 8 people even. So yeah, I mean, I would like to see things go back, but I would also like to see people uh not lose
That
like
efficiency.
the skills that we've
Mm.
honed through shortage here of what we can do and how fast things can be done and what the most efficient way is to do things, because I feel like now people are thinking in their head like, okay, I'm gonna pack this cart with all of these buckets. I'm gonna swing by the otters, give them a quick feed. Then I'm gonna run over to Stellar's Bay and put those buckets in the in the cooler. And then on my way back, I can feed the penguins. Like, you know, it's like
Yeah.
so making sure that we're like you're thinking ahead a few steps, and that really helps to save some time. But yeah, I would love to go back to having a certain number of animals that you're responsible for, and then that really like it really clears up your mind for being able to train more extensively with some of the animals. And that training is like it can be really really valuable if
Mm.
we need it later on.
Absolutely. No, thank you for that. Next question there.
Yeah. So although they're not technically staff members, how do volunteers help in the day-to-day workload of staff members?
Yeah, well, we used to have fish house volunteers who would sort of come in and really help us to bust out fish house. Fish house is like it takes an enormous amount of time in the morning. So like I've been wanting to do like a time lapse of what fish house looks like in the morning for you guys, but like it's like, you know, we run in, we have to get all the fish thawed and make everybody's diets, and that, you know, pretty much we have to do that before we can do anything else, and then the whole thing needs to be cleaned from the floor to the ceiling. And uh so yeah, um our volunteers used to help do that. Now, because of the for-profit designation, we don't really have we don't have the ability to have volunteers. So they actually did
Oh, wow.
hire volunteers. So now the people who used to be our volunteers actually get paid, which is kind of
Oh,
nice.
wow. Okay, that's nice.
Yeah, to help us out in the fish house. Which is it's just enormously helpful. I can't tell you how helpful it is to be able to walk away from the fish house even though it's not cleaned, and know that there's
It's
a
gonna be
staff
sorted
member
out.
in there, and or whether it was, you know, a couple volunteers like we used to have, and they're gonna clean it up nice, and we don't have to worry too much about that. And then, you know, it actually became, because we became increasingly more and more short staffed when we had volunteers up until the aquarium sale. I was literally bringing them out to feed the animals. Like you guys probably saw them on the otter cams every once in a while. Who's that? Oh yeah, those are our volunteers, because I don't have enough hands to feed 6
Yeah.
otters. So here they go. Um so that's not like that was more like a perk that they got, just for being awesome, but not really like a part of their role. And then there usually were volunteers all around the aquarium. We'd have like different types of stands. Like we used to have a like a sea otter kind of a kiosk where they would stand and they had like otter fur that people could feel and like
wow.
kind of interact with guests in that way, because obviously staff can't always be around, but if you spread out volunteers, they would manage like our touch tanks and things like that. So guest interaction is a big part of being a volunteer. So who did I shave? No, the otter, it was an otter pelt. It was an old, I don't even know where it came from. Just a deceased animal, an otter pelt. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, like you just mentioned, you guys don't really take volunteers anymore, for the profit thing. I totally lost my train of thought. Think about it later. Next question. Next question, Georgie.
Somebody here's asking, who determines like which weight an animal should be. So it's not like we say that like okay, Quatsy's never gonna be over 22.5 kilos. That's not not a distinction we would make right now, but it does happen later on. So like for instance, an animal like Kunik, she has a very specific, and this is just from learning her behavior, very specific range. If she gets over 25 kilos, she basically like just drops off a cliff and doesn't want to eat at all. And so her real ideal range is right around 24.5. Anywhere between 24 and 25 is probably pretty good. So like you just start to learn the animals and know the animals. And that's she's a very extreme example, Kunik. Anytime she gets over 25 kilos, it's just done. She's just like, I'm not going to eat for 3 days. And you're like, well, what? That's not okay.
Okay.
So yeah, and there are some animals that can tolerate, like Joey being a good example of like whatever. I don't even know what his weight's going to be because he hasn't shown us like a cap yet.
He's chunky.
But yeah, but so the animals will kind of tell you, and so we go off of them and what they're telling us, and it's called like a good working weight. So like basically we want them to be nice and healthy and chunky as possible while still wanting to participate in their sessions. The second that they don't want to participate, then they're just a little too chunky. But yeah, we haven't found that with Joey yet, so he's chunk on, like.
Do you project? I know it's a bit of a side question. Do you project that Joey's going to be the biggest otter when he's older? At the rate he's going?
I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to say because technically, our otters off the coast of BC should be a little bit smaller than the Alaskan otters.
Okay.
But it's really hard to say. I mean, like, it very well could be. I don't know. I don't honestly know. It's hard to say. I think it would be fun if he got into like the 40 kilo range, honestly. I think like having giant animals is super fun, but
yes.
But only if he's still working. I'd like to see him grow into it a little bit more. He's kind of got like a keg belly right now. So thanks for the sub, Walking Gin. So that, like, I'd like to see him like slim out and get a little bit longer. Like, I feel like he's gonna have a glow up, like he's right now he's like kind of that that pudgy,
yes.
like weird pre-pubescent like sort of situation.
Glow
and
up.
then like Neville Longbottom. I hope he Neville Longbottoms.
Great reference. People Google that immediately.
Yeah. And I think he could. I think he could turn out to be like extremely handsome.
It's gonna be like those shows where the nerdy person takes off the pen and shakes the hair and the glasses like, I'm pretty now.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a great reference. But absolutely. Sorry, I had to interject with that question because I know everyone's asking, and he is here. The little tub berry. Although Mika will say it's just gas and he's slim and trim.
Just gas.
It's just a gassy baby.
Yeah.
A little backpop. Yeah, Georgie.
So the next one is, should more facilities find ways to supplement staffing issues by having more volunteers?
That's a hard question for me because I love our volunteers, but should we rely on free labor or should we just like pay people appropriately and like hire appropriate amounts of staff? So like I love volunteers and I know people love volunteering, but and that's part of the reason why our organization now, as a for-profit, cannot have volunteers, because it would be very much seen as taking advantage of. And it's you get a little bit of a difference when you've got a non-profit, but honestly, like, the volunteers work so hard. Like, why? It's a fine line between like having help and having, like, if I'm just having the volunteers are literally doing the exact same thing that the trainers are doing, like, that's kind of exploiting people a little bit. And even if they like doing it, it's still kind of exploiting people. So so it's a fine line. I mean, I think ultimately, like, all facilities could kind of really benefit from shifting some focus away from, I don't know, I'm sure I could find some program that's got like way too much emphasis on it, and maybe shifting just a little bit of that money towards properly paying and staffing your areas. And I think that would make a big difference in a lot of ways. I just think it's a hard thing because they can't see it on, it can't be seen on like paper. Like, as you're just looking at it, you're going, oh, we'd just be spending this much more money, but we wouldn't be gaining anything out of it. But maybe not immediately, but I think further down the line, like, those gains are, a little bit unseen, but are definitely worthwhile. So yeah, it's that's a hard thing. I love the volunteers, but at a certain, level, they are like, that's why I think it's really cool that they're just paying the volunteers now, because it's like, we needed those people. But a facility should never rely on volunteers. Like, that's
so they're paying all the volunteers now. Is that for all of them?
I don't know. I think that MMR has a different sort of classification. I think that MMR was kind of able to keep its non-profit sort of
MMR,
status.
Yes. Sorry, forget about that. I was just focusing on Banaqua. Yeah. Of course. MMR,
but as far as I know, we will not be able to have volunteers at the Vancouver Aquarium, but maybe some of that will change. I know there's a lot of things going on. But MMR still has volunteers, but yeah, they're kind of a special exception to the case.
So I remember they had something like 300 volunteers once I saw them advertise, which is a lot of people.
That was the entire aquarium. Yeah, we had double the amount of volunteers as we did staff.
Wow.
Yeah.
That would be a lot of people to pay, but no, I understand. Okay, yeah, I forgot about MMR being its own thing. Okay. Next question there.
Cool, yeah. I mean, actually, I was going to say as well, like, on the volunteers thing, just from, like, my opinion was that it was, some people volunteer from a kind of needing, like, a bit more, like, flexibility and kind of just doing, like, 1 or 2 hours a week. And, like, that basically just means that you should be thinking more about accessible, flexible employment as well, as opposed to, like, normal 9-to-5 things that people, like, everyone's supposed to be able to do. Like, it feeds into that question of offering more flexible employment where people have more opportunities to do what they feel able to do and want to do. Yeah. Sorry, that was just my, like...
No, it's good. And I think too, like, some of it has to do with, like BC's saying here, like, some of the volunteers, like, they've just limited the roles now at the, at the MMR, which I know is going to be really hard for volunteers who have been there forever and who have been allowed to do things that are technically only a vet tech should be doing. Like, I shouldn't even be allowed to do some of these things, right? And some of it's like a legal kind of a thing, right? Like, if something were to happen to a volunteer and they were literally doing a staff person's job, well, they're not protected. And so that's sort of the issues with it. And so I think that, going back and limiting volunteer work and what volunteers can do is one solution to it. It's a hard pill to swallow, I think, immediately. But it honestly is, like, for the protection of the volunteers and the organization, that you can't just be letting people who are not there. It's not just that they're not employed, it's not that they're not qualified, it's that they're not covered under insurance policies, right? So it's sort of like the carpet land logistics of it that are the problem. So yeah, that's one thing that nonprofits do a lot, is rely a lot on volunteers. And I think it's lovely that people want to volunteer. And I worked when I was at the Raptor program, it was almost exclusively volunteers, but it's just not not a completely ethical way to operate, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
It's like internships without pay, and it's.
Yeah.
But yeah, that puts a whole new light in it. Jules, you got one more question for us there, or?
Yeah, one more question and then one question from chat. So first question is, what is the minimal educational requirement needed for each type of staff role?
Yeah, so some of this is also going to kind of depend on there's always going to be like a right place, right time kind of a thing. This is like up to the discretion of the hiring agency, but typically for like animal husbandry roles, we have bachelor's degrees in a science field. And what that is can kind of vary, but there's been times where we've hired people who don't have a bachelor's degree, and that can sometimes happen if they're in the right place at the right time. As far as like the other like roles at the aquarium, I don't know that anybody else really requires a degree necessarily. That's a good question. I'm not entirely sure if there are any other roles that like legitimately require a degree. A lot of it's going to come down more to experience. And it's funny because as we circle back, some of that, like when we get experience as animal caretakers, it usually comes in the form of volunteering or internship, unpaid internship experience. So it's one of those crazy things where I don't and we don't do internships in BC anymore, and the reason being is because it was deemed to be like taking advantage of people. So it's one of those things where it's just like yeah, it's such a weird thing, and I know that volunteering means a lot to so many people, and I like that's so important.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those crazy hard like lines to walk, and there's so many like logistical things that go along with it. That's it's not just about what people want to do; it's about what they have to do, and
yes. And you mentioned that whole ramifications and the responsibilities of a volunteer being hurt versus a staff member being hurt. It's not as simple as like, oh, we can just use volunteers. It's And again, this is why we do things like this, folks, like shows like this, because I've learned something now that I didn't even know about any organization that accepts volunteers, is that responsibility behind it of what happens to those people if they get hurt, if they given hours that they overextend themselves. It's quite an interesting thing. And as you said about the experience and the education and a volunteer doing something they're not supposed to, but has to. Gosh.
Yeah, it's such a kerfuffle.
we could have a subject
Honestly.
just on that, but geez, I don't even want to touch that subject. But it's just
No, we're already over time.
yeah. Let's go over to our final question. That is from an audience member.
Yeah, last question is, how often are the animals weighed?
Oh, this kind of depends. This depends largely on, like, if you have an animal that you're concerned about for whatever reason on weight, like too heavy or too skinny, or if they're just if you know they're sick or something like that, you might decide to weigh them every day or every other day or something like that. But typically once a week is good practice. And honestly, when you're talking like zoos, they may only weigh their animals twice a year. Because they're relying more on like the animals just kind of like regulating themselves, because there is a danger in, you weigh the animals every day, you can like oh my gosh, they gained 0.2 kilos today, maybe we should drop their base, like when really you're doing like knee-jerk reactions, and then you're just causing a roller coaster of a mess. So there can be issues with weighing way too often. So I think like best practice is probably about once a week, just to make sure that you're on track and your animals are in a good place. But it all sort of depends. There's like, just like we talked about in the zoos and aquarium world, they rely on more like kind of the model that we're at, which is where like our otters just kind of they've got a great social structure, they've got dynamic habitats. All right, well, they kind of deal with themselves, like and we provide the food, and we try to provide enrichment and things like that, but they're sort of self-regulating. And if there's a little bit of a squabble over food, it's not that big a deal because we know that they're all in good health. So there's kind of like two schools of thought there, but in general, I think weighing too often can definitely cause you just as many problems as not weighing often enough. So kind of depends, but at least once a week we weigh all of our animals.
And as you can see, otters tend to play or keep themselves busy no matter where they are. Even with little the otter spa. Love that.
Yeah. I mean, and like as we've seen, we've been here this whole time. Not a single trainer has entered. Nothing's been going on, and these guys are totally occupied and totally, having a great time doing their own thing. And so, so it's not necessary that they be interacting with people all the time. But
so all we know is that Joey's going to get a little more chunky. Katma's possibly
definitely,
on the diet, and Taz will always be pretty.
For sure.
Okay, so we think that we've reached the end of the questions. Guys, if you have any more questions, please carry on posting them. I'm sure you're going to be streaming after this, KP, or are you going to be streaming?
Yeah, because it's my boy's birthday, so we're gonna bust out the rice dig box and have a little bit of a birthday party for them.
So please by all means join the channel as well. But what are you releasing any more videos? I know you've been doing a lot of ASMR, which is awesome on the shorts. But any deeper dives or currently? Yeah.
So we've got a deeper dive coming up. You guys are gonna love this. Coming up on Saturday. That is going to be about animal vocalization. So you can guess who will be featured. And we'll be talking a little bit about it won't just be about sea otters, but a certain screamy somebody will be in it. And so we'll be we'll do a Quatsi versus Joey, absolutely. So we're gonna be doing vocalizations. That'll be happening on Saturday. You can look for that video, and then just keep an eye out. I'm not gonna do any big dumps like I did the other day of like 8 shorts. The point of putting so many out at the same time was just to make a playlist. So that you guys would have certain things to play through. So now I'm gonna probably do like 1 or 2 a week of like those little shorts that are easy to. Oh yes, and Rayha's reminding us our next AMA we're gonna have a special guest. Jess is gonna be back on Monday's AMA. So
Rayha, she's around.
She's here.
She's here.
And the form's out as well, so I'll post that out again as well. The form for next week on Sea Lions.
Awesome.
And we'll make sure it's pinned on our side as well, because you guys can ask questions there as well. As always, it will all be pinned in the AMA questions channel. So please go there and for all those questions that you want to ask, because Jess is going to be a guest. But before we go, one last thing is, you mentioned earlier and someone wants to find out, when are you starting Joey's birthday celebration? What weekend?
Okay, so let's take a look at our little calendar here. Let me try to make sense of this. So his birthday is the 23rd.
Yes.
So I am going to be doing the 19th is when I'm planning on doing his sort of we're doing space otters, outer space.
I love that.
As the theme for Joey's like sort of pre-birthday celebration that chat decided, and that was based on the charity event that we did. So you can look for that on Saturday. I will also I'll ping the Discord and keep you guys updated, but that is when I'm planning on doing the Otter Space party. You can obviously watch that live, but also I'm going to be filming it. And you can watch it more extensively and up close when we put together for on his actual birthday. I'll be releasing a longer video just about Joey and about how important he is and about how important zoos and aquariums are. Is going to be the theme of that video.
So mark it down. 19th, people. That was the question. 19th. But thank you very much to yourself, KP, and Georgie for filling in for Rhea. I really appreciate it.
Yes.
Also, thank you to Tim.
No worries.
To Bag for moderating on my side. I really appreciate you guys always moderating the streams. It will be pinned. Ask questions. Go join KP's stream now, please. And we will see you next week, Monday. Thank you very much.
All right, guys.